Today we're going to talk about task-based language teaching, or TBLT. This presentation is going to walk you through the theory underpinning task-based language teaching, as well as some practical advice on how to apply it in your own teaching context. So I'm going to give you a little introduction to myself to explain why I'm here talking to you about this today. I'll review the definition of TBLT. We'll go through the theoretical underpinnings and then talk about practical application. So this is me. My name is Katie Nielsen, and I have a PhD in second language acquisition from the University of Maryland. Right now I'm the Chief Education Officer at Voxy, which is a web and mobile platform that is used to teach English to learners all over the world. And before this, I spent most of my life working in academia, either building language courses, evaluating language courses, doing teacher training, and basically helping people use technology to make language learning more efficient and effective. So task-based language teaching is a pedagogic approach to language instruction that's based on the concept of organizing courses around tasks rather than linguistic concepts or communicative functions. So let's take a second and think about this. What this is saying is that instead of the traditional approach to language instruction, where you come up with a list of vocabulary words or concepts or functions or grammatical points and build a syllabus around teaching learners those specific things, what you do with task-based instruction is organize your syllabus around the tasks that learners need to be able to accomplish in the real world. Fundamentally, language is a tool that we use to communicate in order to do things. And task-based language teaching teaches people to do those things, and they get the language they need to do them all at once. There are some methodological principles for task-based language teaching, and they're designed to facilitate the building blocks that we know need to happen in order for people to learn a second language. We know you need access to lots and lots of input. We know you need the opportunity to produce the language yourself. We know that you need interaction with other interlocutors, and we know you need feedback. So TBLT is designed to create a psycholinguistic environment that gives learners access to all of these requirements for SLA. The first principle is to use tasks, not texts, because the course objective in a TBLT course is for learners to meet their real-world goals. So specific linguistic structures are not the goal, and courses are organized around what learners need to accomplish. Another methodological principle is that you need to promote learning by doing. Basically, it's show, don't tell, because practical experience brings tasks to life. You want to give your students the opportunities for role play and practice with authentic materials and tasks. Give them examples of real people using the language you're teaching rather than scripted dialogues or fill-in-the-blank exercises in a textbook. Show them how people use language to do what it is they want to be able to do, so they learn to do it themselves. Now, another principle is that you need to offer rich, elaborated input. I just told you on the last slide to use genuine resources or authentic content, but it's important to remember that authentic content needs scaffolding. Videos can be broken into chunks. Articles can be cut into pieces, and you can offer comprehension questions or glosses or definitions. You want to avoid using simplified input. We know from lots of research that when we try to simplify complex language, we actually are offering learners examples of language that are not real, and that instead we can elaborate it, give them the tools they need to understand the authentic materials, and offer many, many examples of the same task. That means if your learners want to be able to fill out a job application or give a speech in the language they're studying, you should let them see 10 different examples of job applications, or have them watch 10 different speeches on the same topic with different speakers. They need the repetition of not the same exact thing over and over again, but many similar things relevant to the tasks they want to be able to accomplish. Because a real language helps learners apply what they've learned. The next principle is focus on form. Now, what does this mean? It means you want to start with a task and offer grammar instruction second. We know that learners only incorporate grammar into their emerging languages when they're developmentally ready for it. And it doesn't happen at the same time for every single learner. So what you want to do is teach them grammatical forms just in time, when it's necessary for the task they're trying to accomplish, or when learners have a question about a grammatical form. Now that means you don't sit down and say, okay, today's Tuesday, so I'm going to teach the third person hypothetical conditional. It means that when a learner has a question about how to say something hypothetically, you help the learner understand the form. So you wouldn't have a weekly 5-minute grammar update on the difference between used to or used to unless you knew that your class needed that because they were all ready to understand that and they were all making mistakes with the difference between those two phrases. Because you want to respect learners' internal syllabi. What does that mean? Well, we know language learning is an individualized process. It's like learning any other skill, like cooking or surfing or riding a bike. Everyone is going to do it in a slightly different way. And the most important thing is to give them time to practice so that they can make improvements at their own pace in their own way. Feedback should be based on learners' needs and performance, but not because you believe that everybody by day 7 should understand the difference between AR verbs and ER verbs. Now, you can use technology to differentiate instruction so learners can work with materials that are relevant to their needs and their interests and get feedback when they need help with specific words or concepts. And the nice thing about respecting learners' internal syllabi is that task-based syllabi can work regardless of learners' developmental stages. If you organize a course around tasks, you can have some learners at higher proficiency levels working with some learners at lower proficiency levels on the same exact task. The higher proficiency level learners will probably be able to do it in a more sophisticated way, but that doesn't mean that the lower proficiency level learners won't also be able to accomplish the same task, and they can work with each other. You want to promote cooperative learning, speaking about learning with each other. Collaborative work promotes language learning because people are trying to communicate. It means that you have negotiation for meaning. It means that you have a noticing because learners are sometimes able to notice forms and the form meaning mapping in the speech of one of their classmates. You can have peer observations and feedback, opportunities for mentoring and coaching from fluent speakers and from teachers. A cooperative, collaborative environment is ideal for having learners practice real-world tasks in class and for them to get the skills they need to be able to do those tasks out in the world. One note is that clear guidelines will promote effective group work. You don't just want to set your learners loose with directions to role play a task. You want to make sure that you give them clear instructions about what you expect. Maybe you want them to go through and list all the steps that need to be accomplished for the task to be done, and then take turns making sure different conversation partners actually are going through those steps. So, let's talk about the guiding principles of task-based language teaching. I just went through the methodological principles of the approach to language instruction, but let's take things and make them a little bit more practical. Number 1 is that you want to begin with a needs analysis to identify target tasks. You want to figure out what your learners need to be able to do. Then you want to organize syllabi and assessments around the target tasks. So here is where you develop pedagogic tasks, or the building blocks to being able to do the real-world task that learners can do in the classroom. You want to use a wide range of genuine resources. Individualize instruction and keep it real. When you're working in a task-based framework, you're go-to principle should be giving learners real-world practice. So what is a needs analysis? It's where you figure out what learners need to be able to accomplish. And you should triangulate sources of data. So you can ask learners, what do you want to be able to do in the language you're learning? And sometimes they'll just tell you, I want to be able to speak it. And then you need to ask them, no, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to move abroad and get a job in a different country? Do you want to be able to talk to your employees who all speak a different language? Do you want to be able to read the newspaper, go on a trip? What do you want to do? Then you can try to help learners take some ownership over figuring out how to structure their experience to get the practice they need to be able to do that task in the real world. And when I say triangulate sources of data, you should go to more than just the learner. Perhaps there are overarching goals of the language program in which you're working. And in that case, you want to make sure you're preparing students to meet those goals. Then you want to collect examples of genuine discourse. Once you've figured out what your learners want to be able to do in the target language, get examples of it. Look for videos that show people doing the task. Record audio recordings of people doing that task in the real world. If your students want to be able to go order in a restaurant in Spanish, go get a recording of people doing that in the real world and play that for your students. And then organize all of your content into tasks. Because a syllabus in a task-based language teaching course is organized around target tasks. You might have a syllabus that starts with understanding and following street directions, or ordering food in a restaurant, or succeeding in a job interview, or filling out a job application, or buying a plane ticket, arranging a trip. These are all applying to study abroad. These are all real-world tasks that could be used to organize a syllabus. Once you've got the syllabus structured around the target tasks, you want to think about giving learners opportunities first to practice listening or reading. This is input flooding. It means you want to give them lots and lots of examples of rich input and have them practice listening and reading the target language. And you want to give them something to do. So let's say you have videos of people giving PowerPoint presentations in the language that your learners are studying. If you just play those videos, your learners won't pay attention. So they need something to do. Give them words to check off, have them listen for something specific, give them a partially completed transcript of the video to fill in, give them something to do. And this builds to giving them output practice, which is where you want to give them the opportunity to speak. And then you can move towards a real-world task practice. And see if your learners can find ways to go actually practice what they want to be able to do in the language they're studying in the real world. This could be in person, it could be via Skype, it could be via simulation, but encourage your students in a task-based course to think about how they can get the practice they need to be able to meet their own goals. Because you want to individualize instruction. Use technology. There are opportunities for real-world practice everywhere, and you can use technology to capture them. You can send your students out and have them record themselves working on the target tasks they want to be able to accomplish and bring those recordings to class. When you think about task-based language assessment, it's important to start with what your learners need to be able to do. And performance-based assessment is often the best way to do this, because ultimately learners are working on whatever language you're teaching because they want to be able to communicate to do something. Let's see if they can do it. Go through and create a rubric for the target task and try to list all of the things that need to happen for that task to be done. Did the learner understand a clarification request and respond appropriately? Did the learner say what he wanted to order? Did the learner have a polite greeting or salutation? You can take a task and break it into tiny subtasks and then use those to make sure learners are able to do all of the different pieces of the target task. And in this way, you can integrate language and content. So you're not saying the learners understand these 5 vocabulary words. In order to meet the subtask requirements, they will have to be able to know the vocabulary words. Ultimately, you want to keep it real. Remember that the point of a task based course is for learners to accomplish their real world goals. So, language should be considered in terms of how it affects learners' ability to execute them. And when in doubt, offer more opportunities for genuine task practice. I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for your time.